Welcome to The Real with Joseph Lamtman. I am Joseph Lamtman. Thank you for tuning in this episode of The Real, taking time out of your day to come watch this episode. I really appreciate that. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe for me. I'd really appreciate that as well. That's the best way you can support this channel and help me grow my content and grow this channel to where I'd like it to be. Everybody hit the like button for me on the way in on this video today. That also helps promote this video more in the algorithms, helps grow this channel more as well. Please share this content. I would really appreciate that. My guests would as well. If you would please share this episode with someone you know that maybe is interested in the topic we're talking about today. Please leave a comment below as well. We'd love to hear your guys' feedback. You can interact with myself and the guest on the panel and the live chat as well. Whatever we're talking about, just leave a comment there in the live chat. Pop in and say hello. We'll put it on the screen for you. And yeah, without further ado, let's get to the show. Welcome back to The Real with Joseph Lamtman. I am Joseph Lamtman, and yeah, if you're new here, please like, subscribe, and share. Shout out to all the new subscribers. As expected, we'll get right into it. We were expecting this news today, some breaking news from the Cleveland Browns that they fired head coach Kevin Stefanski. So yeah, let's get right to it. And yeah, like I said, breaking news out of Cleveland. The Cleveland Browns have officially fired head coach Kevin Stefanski. Kevin was let go by the organization this morning. They met with Jimmy Haslam, an ownership group, and decided to move forward, as we all expected that they would move on from Kevin Stefanski. Ownership, Jimmy Haslam did speak with the media today, as well as Andrew Berry. We'll get to some of those comments here shortly and react to those. Here is a statement here from Jimmy Haslam. He said, quote, "We have tremendous gratitude for Kevin's leadership of the Cleveland Browns over the last 6 seasons." He goes on to say, "He is a good football coach and even better person. We appreciate all his hard work and dedication to our organization, but our results over the last 2 seasons have not been satisfactory, and we believe a change at the head coaching position is necessary. We wish Kevin, Michelle, and the Stefanski family all the best in the future. Andrew Berry will continue to lead our football operations. The entirety of our focus is on building a team that brings our fans the success they long deserve. We will continue to work relentlessly towards that goal and invest whatever resources necessary to build a winning football program. Andrew will immediately begin our thorough process to find an outstanding new head coach and leader of our football team. We have an exciting young core to build upon, and Andrew and his team are intent on adding talent to this core and building out a roster that can achieve sustainable success." Again, as from owner Jimmy Haslam. Kevin Stefanski also left a statement. This is from Brad Stainbrook, courtesy of him. Quote, "After 6 seasons as the head coach of Cleveland Browns, I leave with an immense sense of gratitude," Stefanski said in a statement. "When I arrived in January of 2020, this organization, this community, and fans embraced me and my family with open arms. I cannot express properly in words how good we have been treated. A sincere thank you to everyone who I've been so blessed to work for and with over these 6 seasons. I'd like to especially thank my coaching staff and the players who did everything that was ever asked of them. They fought through injury and adversity while always putting the team first, and team first, all caps. I wish all of you nothing but success." And then I have a thing here from Andrew Berry. He had kind of a longer statement. We'll get to that in a second. But Andrew said, "We will remain steadfast in our commitment to our fans and building the Browns into an organization that sustains success. Now our attention turns to the search for the next person, for the person to lead and develop what will be a young offense with heavy investment over the next 6 months to match and build on the performance of a young defense that is already playing at an elite level." And so, again, that is a recap from this morning. And, Carly Teller, Wyatt Teller's wife, she had to put her 2 cents in. "You play stupid games, you win stupid prizes," was her tweet. So that was interesting as well. But, yeah, and obviously stuff's starting to leak out. Now we're starting to see from Pete Prisco that, from what he was told, that, Stefanski never wanted Deshaun Watson and blah, blah, blah. So we'll get to that in a minute. But, yeah, Kevin Stefanski is fired, folks. As we all expected, he's no longer the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. Now, where do they go from here? That's going to be the next hot topic. What are they going to do next? And, Jimmy Haslam did speak today to the media, so we'll hear from Jimmy's comments here in a second. If you want to call into the show and give your 2 cents on this right now, call in right now, 216-532-5550. Again, 216-532-5550. Call, state your name, where you're calling from, and you can kind of give your 2 cents. You can chat with me on what you think they should do moving forward. Who do you want as the next head coach of the Browns? should Andrew Berry have lost his job? Because Andrew Berry did keep his job, obviously, and we'll see what happens now moving forward with him. Shout out to Jeffrey. He said, yes, we made a smart decision for once. So Jeffrey likes the decision. So I know there's a ton of different opinions on this right now. I know there's some people in the media who thought Kevin should not have lost his job, and maybe if you fired one, you should have fired both. I said last night I kind of tend to agree with that. I think they're both at fault for kind of where we are. I think the one guy that left too, DePodesta, was at fault a little bit as well. So, but Andrew keeps his job. And so what do you guys think? Again, call into the show now, 216-532-5550. And you can come up here and give your 2 cents on what do you think of these firings today. Again, breaking news: the Cleveland Browns have fired head coach Kevin Stefanski, as we all expected. This wasn't something that was a shock to a lot of people. Even after the win yesterday, that didn't really surprise me at all. And so, yeah. But let's get to the statements now from Jimmy Haslam. Before I get my man up here, I got the professional fan on deck. Ready to go. I'm sure he's going to have a lot to say. So let's start with Jimmy Haslam first, what he had to say today. We'll start with the opening statements from both Jimmy and Andrew. Now, I have some clips cut up from their press conferences today. I have some things I want to break down with Mike. But let's just start with the opening statements they gave, and then I'll bring Mike up here, and we'll both give our full reaction to this. And so, and what's next for the Browns? I mean, there's been a ton of other coaching firings. Pete Carroll got fired from the Raiders. Jonathan Gannon got fired from the Cardinals. And Jonathan Gannon's name is already linked to the Browns' job. I know Mary Kay's already out campaigning for him. So, and I believe there was another coach firing last night. The Falcons GM and head coach. We reacted to that live last night. They got fired as well. So there's a ton of, this is Black Monday in the NFL where a lot of these firings happen. So let's start with Jimmy Haslam first. He spoke to the media first and out in the lobby of Berea. So that was interesting. That was a new setup. But here's what Jimmy had to say in his opening statement.
Good morning, everyone. Personnel decision.
Oh, excuse me. I still have it sped up when I was trying to get my notes together. I don't think you guys would listen to it that fast, but let's go to normal speed here. Here's Jimmy Haslam.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Personnel decisions, particularly with people at the top of an organization, are always difficult.
I don't think it's right.
And I can tell.
Apologies. A little technical difficulties. We're on the fly today, folks. I mean, we are trying to get stuff up here. There we go. All righty. My apologies. All right.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Personnel decisions, particularly with people at the top of an organization, are always difficult. And I can tell you, having made a lot of these over the years, that this was as difficult as any we've ever had to make because of the quality of the person involved. Organized, worked hard, navigated our ship for 6 years through the inevitable ups and downs that we face in the NFL. Outstanding father and husband. And I think even you all who are around a lot probably underappreciate how much time we all spend together. And there's nothing more fun than winning an NFL game like we did the last 2 weeks, beating our arch rival, the Steelers, 2 weeks ago, and then winning yesterday on the last play of the game, and seeing the joy in the locker room and losing an NFL game. And it's finite. You either win or you lose. And Kevin did a lot of good things here over his time period with us. It was an extremely difficult decision we made. And I shouldn't say I have no doubt, I would be highly optimistic that Kevin will be a head coach again in the league. Now I want to turn our attention and talk to our fans, okay? And I want you to hear this, okay? First of all, ownership takes full responsibility for where we are. To win 8 games in 2 years is horrible. It's totally unacceptable, okay? And it's not going to continue, okay? And I want the fans to know we are as frustrated as you are, and we hear a lot from our fans, which we actually appreciate. We have great fans. They're extremely passionate, and they deserve better than what they've gotten the last 2 years, okay? No, I don't need to say anything else. We are going to give you a better product. Our sole goal here is to be a consistent winner, not make the playoffs in 20 and then make it again in 23, not win 8 games in 2 years. That's not what we're trying to do. That's not acceptable. Our fans deserve better. We'll start the head coach search literally this afternoon. Andrew Berry will lead that effort. Key members of his organization as well as ownership will be involved in the process. You all have been through these processes before, and I think we have a good plan laid out. I want to comment on Andrew because I know that there's questions out there. Well, why didn't you change both of them? Or why didn't you change Andrew and not Kevin? And I would say this. I think Andrew, over the last year, has done a very good job. And I want to go through that because I think it's important to talk about the moves he made to strengthen our team, okay? I think it began with what I would call a very efficient free agency. We added one player, and that player made a substantial difference in our football team, and that was Malik Collins. Malik is not only a really good player, he's a really good person who is a leader on our defense, a leader in the defensive line room. Andrew negotiated a trade a week or two before the draft started, in which we added 3 draft picks, 2 last year, a second and a fourth or a fifth, and a first this year, okay? Then I think we had one of the better drafts that we've ever had. I think we added 4 really good football players who were either first team all rookie or second team all rookie. And I think Carson has a really good chance to be the NFL Rookie of the Year, defensive Rookie of the Year. I think what's important to understand about our rookies, though, and you all see them, you all know them, they're not only really good players, they're really good people. And they will be the cornerstone with which we'll build and grow and develop this winning team. But I think it would be short-sighted to not just look at free agency, not just look at the draft, but also to look at a couple of other moves Andrew made. We have struggled to have a consistent place kicker here really the whole time we've earned the team. And I guess the way we started this year, you'd say, well, looks like you're continuing to struggle. Our grandsons were at the game, and we were coming back to Cleveland last night, and I said, Andre Schmidt is a great lesson of when you fail, pick yourself up, persevere, and good things will happen. And the signing of Andre and bringing him on, holding with him that first week when everybody was saying, you need to cut him, you need a new kicker, I think we've hopefully solved our place kicking woes for a long time. Quality person, the team believes in him, and we're glad to have him. And then lastly, I think something that's underappreciated was the Tyson Campbell trade. Tyson is, here again, a really good player and a really good person. And I think all you need to know about Tyson is he has been playing with a bad shoulder for several weeks. We're unsure if he's going to go play, got hurt in the first half. He went in, got treatment, came back and tried to play in the second half of a game where we were trying to win our 5th game. It wasn't like we were trying to make the playoffs. I think this year we not only added, and I'm repeating myself on purpose, really good players, but also really good people. And I think that core that Andrew has put together this year will help move us forward. We hope to have similar results this coming year.
We'll take.
Okay, so that was courtesy of the Cleveland Browns YouTube page. My apologies. I got so many tabs open right now. My computer's kind of glitched a little bit, but no. So a lot there from Jimmy Haslam. He said a mouthful there. We're gonna get into it. Joining me now is the man himself, the professional fan, Sir Michael Antonace. Mike, what's happening on this Breaking News Monday?
What up? Live from my car.
Yeah, live from the car, like you said. But Mike, obviously a lot to react to. We'll get to Andrew Berry in a minute, but starting with Jimmy Haslam's opening statement there, I think what stood out to me, Mike, he really went into detail there at the end about why Andrew Berry kept his job. Because I even on myself last night, and a lot of people were saying, if you're gonna fire one, you might as well fire both because they're both kind of culpable in all this. I think they were hand in hand, they were hired together. Now the gentleman who hired them obviously beat feet to Colorado, and I think they were all linked together, in my opinion, all along. So Andrew Berry is able to keep his job. Kevin's gone. To me, Mike, he went into detail. It sounds like the draft really is what saved his job, and just the kind of the trades. And I guess that was enough for Haslam. I think Jimmy Haslam, Mike, in my opinion, didn't want to go through a full-blown reset again. I think he didn't want to do that. I think he views his team as, I think if we get some more good players like we did this past year, get a different head coach in there that we think it can lead this group a bit differently, maybe then we'll get something better. What do you think?
Yeah, and on the topic of Andrew too, it's as if he's not. You're right. He's not like free of blame for the past couple of years. You know, the Deshaun trade really did set the franchise back, and I'm sure he had a pretty big, part in that. But I do think Andrew, at least personally, did enough to save his job this past year through free agency. I mean, Malik Collins is a fantastic pickup. The draft, I mean, everything Haslam said, I kind of just agree with. He had as good of a year as a GM in the NFL can have, in my opinion. You have yourself a stellar draft while picking up an additional first the next year, and you were pretty good in free agency. So I think I'm not shocked that they kept Andrew. I was actually more in favor of them keeping Andrew and seeing actually having him spearhead the look for the next head coach, because at the end of the day, Andrew, I'm sure Andrew and Kevin were close, but Andrew didn't pick Kevin. The team picked Kevin, then they picked Andrew. So be curious to see how that goes. But yeah, man, Kevin Stefanski, it's in a weird way. Like, I know we like to make jokes. We like to have fun. It's a little bittersweet. He did bring some semblance of stability to a team that severely lacked it for most of our lives. But what he did wasn't enough. You can't, this is a results-based league. You can't win 8 games in 2 years. And, it's unacceptable. Even what Haslam said. Now, I know he's politicking a little bit up there, but I did like what he said, that it was unacceptable, that the fans deserve better, because we do. And, it's didn't come as a surprise to either of us. Didn't come as a surprise to anybody who'd been watching the show. But, now that it's finally here, we can kind of talk about it in the open air and kind of as it sets in, and get on with the coaching search. But I'm optimistic with Andrew leading it, that he'll choose the right guy.
Yeah, I mean, here's my only thing. It sounds like to me, Mike, Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski Jimmy Haslam both kind of said today, Mike, they believe that the roster the last 2 years was better than what it produced. Not saying they thought they were a playoff team, but it felt like to me that came across they thought that team should have won more than 8 games. And was it 8 games in 2 years or whatever it was?
Yeah.
So, that's what I took from that, Mike. I don't know if that's what you got. I mean, they even said it. I mean, Haslam said it flat out that he felt it was a little better than what they produced. And so, a lot of people look at that roster, though, Mike, the last 2 years, look at that receiving core, you look at that offensive line this year, and you're thinking, well, where the hell do you see that at? Because you gave the guy 2 rookie quarterbacks, an old and not good offensive line. And going back to the offensive line in particular, I mean, that's probably outside the quarterback, in my opinion, the most important unit. And you go back to last year, I mean, at one point, Mike Vrabel was coaching offensive line at the end of the year, not the guy that they hired to begin with. So it's like, I don't know. Did they feel maybe they was mismanaged by Kevin? I mean, what was your reaction to that? Because I thought that was fascinating. He kind of just said it flat out too, like, yeah, we felt it was a little better than what they produced.
Yeah, and maybe he just meant the competitiveness. Like, maybe he didn't mean that in terms of wins so much as just like, we need to see.
Well, he was
like, I had said
he was asked, and he's pretty much, they asked him, do you think it were more than X amount of wins they had? And he said, yeah, I think we're a little better.
Yeah, I mean, and here that could be. I mean, Kevin did make some boneheaded decisions. I think particularly in the Vikings and the Tennessee game, that both games that I think you and I would both agree we should have won, and then we're sitting here at what seven wins, which isn't great, but it's respectable. I wouldn't disagree with that. There were. Even game 1. I mean, game 1 was one of those games that wasn't called very well by Kevin, that we should have won as well, the first game against the Bengals. So, I mean, I don't know if I necessarily disagree with what Haslam's saying. I mean, 3 games is a lot of games, and if it's your decision-making that, you could have had an 8-win season in a year where your division was super weak, maybe that things shake out a little bit differently, but I I think, and I don't want to spoil it because I know we're going to listen to Andrew Berry's press conference together, but I did give it a listen, and it was a bit telling what he was saying as well when it comes to the offense specifically. So,
yeah, and I think a lot of it, Mike, to me, and we heard this from Stump Mitchell. Obviously, was in the building when they had Baker, when they had Watson. He was there front row every day, and he said it didn't seem like Baker and Kevin really got along, or not that they didn't like each other, they just didn't really mesh, and that eventually, Baker got pushed out of town. But then it comes out today, though, Mike, that Kevin Stefanski didn't want Deshaun Watson. I mean, that was put out this morning immediately, right here from Pete Pritzko. Obviously, that was put out for a reason. That he didn't want to make that trade. So it's kind of like, I don't know what quarterback Kevin ever really wanted, Mike. It doesn't seem like he. It doesn't seem like he and the upper management, Deep Podesta and Barry, it didn't seem like they really all three got along in terms of. Not that they didn't like each other. I think obviously they were family. It sounds like, and they were really close, but it didn't seem like they really saw eye to eye on a lot of these decisions. And Mike, I think it kind of solidifies what we said all along for the last year. And I'll go back to this. That this was from Tony Grossi back in 21. It says Paul DePodesta is pretty much convinced owner Jimmy Haslam the only way to build a Super Bowl team is by consistently throwing for explosive plays in the passing game, apparently no matter the weather conditions. And it went on to talk about Stefanski and Alex Van Pelt at that time, insisted their system was rooted in the running game, right? And they had a lot of success with that. But it says the bottom line is Stefanski's job is safe because he is completely adhering to DePodesta's advanced statistics and models and not resisting them. Disagreeing or rejecting DePodesta's research would be Stefanski's quickest ticket out of town. He is smart enough to know that. Well, here we are, Mike, 5 years after this was put out, 4 or 5 years later, and they ran Baker Mayfield out of town. They completely brought in a whole different style of quarterback, paid $230 million for him, and they tried to build a whole offense around him. And we said all along, it makes sense why he didn't want to give up play calling to Ken Dorsey, because he didn't believe in that. He didn't want to fire his coaches to begin with Van Pelt and Stump and pushing Bill Callahan out. I don't think he ever wanted to do that. And I kind of think, Mike, what we said all along, that Barry was kind of the third wheel. DePodesta was making a lot of decisions, as it was purported here, and a lot of people upset. I know some people in the media, and I know that I got a clip from Barry. He was asked about today. They're giving still the PC answer, but Mike, he was the first guy out there in a lot of drafts. We heard from Stump Mitchell himself saying that in the 2020 draft, Bill Callahan said, "Go get me Tristan Wirfs." Andrew said, "Okay." They went out and took Jed Wills instead while they were both still on the board. And who was the first guy out there in the media, Mike, telling them that we got the guy we wanted all along? Paul DePodesta. And so, no coincidence to me, 5 years later, DePodesta's gone, Mike, and now Stefanski's gone shortly after at the end of the season. I think there was definitely a lot of different philosophical visions in this organization for the last 6 years. They advertised it as like this whole thing was so aligned. They ran Freddie and Dorsey out of town, and we're going to bring this alignment and blah, blah, blah. And Mike, I think there was just way too many. It seems to me there was way too many different philosophies still. I don't think Kevin really ever truly got the quarterback he wanted. And I think you had one guy in the owner's ear who was pushing a bunch of malarkey, in my opinion, of just it's too much analytical stuff. And then you got a guy in Andrew Berry who was kind of sitting there probably with his own opinion, and he's the one that kind of won out in the end. So I know I said a mouthful there, but to me, I just think, Mike, there was definitely, and I'm gonna get to Haslam's comment here in a minute about the dysfunction today, but I think to me, Mike, this kind of screams like there was a little more dysfunction than we may have thought. Not in a bad way personally, but just maybe philosophically, there was a lot of disagreement.
Right. Yeah. And I would agree with that. I mean, Kevin Stefanski was a first time head coach, and this article is from years ago, like didn't want to rock a boat, and having DePodesta make those decisions. I think we all agree wasn't a smart choice, considering he didn't have too much experience in the NFL. Tori says John Gruden. That's a fun name. I mean, I wouldn't be against it, but the NFL is never going to let that man back.
No, that ain't gonna happen. But
yeah, firm believer that he is blackballed forever.
Yeah, but going back to your point, though, I mean, like you were saying, you kind of see it the same way I did.
Yeah, same exact way. I mean, and here, like maybe he didn't have anything to do with Van Pelt getting fired and whatnot, but at the same time, you have to adapt as a head coach. I mean, you're given a quarterback that, okay, maybe he wasn't maybe he'll never return to what he was, and maybe he was never going to do that with you. Maybe Deshaun was truly, a step below where he was before, but you still didn't attempt to adapt to things that Deshaun was very comfortable with. Um, the reports coming out that the philosophies that he was talking about with Deshaun was extremely uncomfortable with, just playing it on the field. So,
and Stub Mitchell has pointed that out too. We'll ask him about it when we get him on, but he even referenced to that too, Mike, about how he in his eyes Kevin never really built around Deshaun like he thought he should have to get the best out of Deshaun. That they were kind of going in two different directions, and I think it just goes back to what we're saying. Remember, Mike, when they hired these guys, it was DePodesta led the search, and it was Stefanski first, Barry second, and they were all aligned, and everybody said, "Oh, they finally got alignment in Cleveland. There's no more dysfunction," and blah blah blah. But I think we just look at it 6 years later, recapping it now that they're both gone. That I don't think they ever really were aligned, Mike, philosophically, and where do they need to be in terms of wins and losses, which is what it's all about. They may have liked each other, they may have been good friends, family even, but in terms of vision for the team, I don't think they were aligned. And I think Kevin, it was his first time gig, and he took the opportunity. And like the article said, I think the article was proven true. And I think today stamped it the way they're talking about him, not in a negative way, but just the way they're kind of recapping it, saying it, that there was definitely a difference of vision for this organization. And I'm curious, Mike, what changed in the last year? Because DePodesta, all of a sudden, people had said for last year. Remember back in November of 24, Mike, it was rumored that he was getting phased out, and then we get to the draft. They finally have a better draft than they've had in recent years, and it seems like things have started to change a little bit in terms of that aspect, in terms of player acquisition and trades. But the product on the field, in terms of the coaching, I think was still suspect in some areas, but I don't know. I mean, this is obviously fresh. I'll be honest with you, Mike. I feel somewhat for Stefanski because I feel like he was kind of the fall guy for uh, DePodesta's basically shot at trying to run an NFL football franchise. And people can say he wasn't that involved, but we've done many shows on it. He was pretty involved more than people think.
right. And I agree with that. But, in the same token, while that's a very fair point, and I agree with that. Like Stefanski did never adapt. He never adapted to Baker.
And that was his downfall. He never
Yeah.
stood up to management, and he didn't know how to adapt and how to. I think, like Jersey said, sometimes he was a little too passive. And he didn't. Jersey made a great point last night. Kevin didn't have anybody to help develop him as a coach here. Above, I mean, who was here as like an executive, like that could really help him develop as a coach? He didn't have anybody.
Right.
I thought that was interesting. But I think too, Mike, to kind of put a bow on that part of this conversation, I think you look back on all this stuff too. I think now they have to really find that collaboration fully aligned. You know what I mean? I know Barry said today, we'll get to it in the second, what they're looking for to head coach, but I think one thing too, Mike, to put the Myles Garrett thing, and I said it last year when it happened, almost a year ago when he requested that trade. I remember I said there was a Cold War. I labeled it in Berea, or a Civil War, I believe, not Cold War. I'm thinking of the Cold War, not the actual Cold War. It's cold out, so sorry. Civil War in Berea, as I labeled it. You remember that we talked about? We did shows on it. And I said at that time, I think there was something a little more going on with that. Myles knew he was going to get paid all along, which he did. And, they didn't want him to leave. I don't think he ever really wanted to leave, truly. I think it was more about getting his money, but also it was more of a power struggle within. And then it comes to find out, now we know Andrew Berry is represented by Clutch Sports, which is the same representation of Myles Garrett. I mean, I just look back at that now even too, Mike, and I'm wondering, I think that moment in that franchise, and maybe we'll know more down the road one day what really went on. I think that was a pivotal moment in that franchise. I think Myles and maybe Andrew Berry are lockstep. And then, we heard Myles this week. He didn't really like endorse Kevin a whole lot, but then we hear Andrew Berry say today that him and Myles talk all the time, and they have the same agent. I think that moment, Mike, I think when they made him fire his staff, right? I think that was the beginning of the end. And then that moment where he requested that trade, and those two have the same agent, and then he eventually got paid. And then now you kind of see where things have panned out. They traded Flacco middle of the season. Kevin wasn't happy about that, didn't know about it. That was kind of the cherry on top. I just think, Mike, there was and then Deep Podesta just abruptly leaves. I think there was a definite power struggle going on there back in the spring or back in February, whatever that was when he requested that trade.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm in here. I agree with that. I think, it's pretty evident at this point, like there was a lot of stuff going by. And even like before Miles signed the contract, he was like, well, I had a meeting with Andrew, and Andrew kind of told me the plan. And he's like, I agreed with it. And then on his exit interview, more or less, Miles goes, they asked him about that, like, hey, whatever plan they told you about, obviously the season is kind of a failure. You're ending the season with 5 wins. Congratulations on the sack record, but what, did the plan like come to fruition? Like, is it what you thought it would be? And he goes, for the most part, he goes, some of the stuff had to change, but, that's not anybody's fault. Like, I don't hold that against them. They don't have a crystal ball. So I wonder what he's referring to there, but
yeah. And there'll be a lot more we'll get into there here down the road. But with those comments, I'm sure Miles, I believe he'll have his exit meeting with ownership this week, maybe tomorrow or today, whatever it was. So Jimmy Haslam, Mike, was a little fired up today. And I don't say fired up, but he was a little aggravated when he had to make this point about dysfunction in the organization, Mike. And here's what Jimmy had to say.
Raise the roster, so did it have impact? Yes.
Jimmy, do you think the alignment between Barry and Stefanski suffered this year?
No.
He didn't know you were trading Joe Flacco. How does that happen?
Let me say this, and some of you said this is a dysfunctional building. I take huge exception to that. The two of them work just like this, okay? And they talk all the time. Their offices are basically next door to each other. I mean, is there tension in the building? Of course. I mean, this is a hard business, and there's lots of stuff going on. The two of them work together extremely well, extremely well.
Why would the head coach be surprised that it started?
I can't comment on that one thing, Tony, but if anybody says this is dysfunctional or those two of them did not work well, that's dead wrong.
I find that interesting, Mike, because maybe they worked well together, but he said the word there. Was there tension? Yeah. I think it kind of goes on, Mike, we were just talking about. I mean, there was definitely, it seems like somebody above them making more decisions in the last 6 years.
Yeah. Philosophical tension, like you were saying.
Yeah. I mean, you got what's your reaction to what he had to say there fully?
I mean, here, the fact that they worked together and, they were lockstep more or less, like, I believe that they liked each other and worked together. Like Andrew in today's presser looked genuinely upset at what he had to do, but knew he had to do it, kind of thing. But that doesn't change the fact that I think dysfunction is probably not the right word. I think we kind of hit the nail on the head with philosophical differences.
Yeah.
I disagree with people I love and care about all the time. That doesn't mean like we don't work well together, and it doesn't mean that I don't care about them any less. It's just, sometimes there's philosophical differences or just differences in opinion. And when it comes to running a football team, like those can end up hurting the team at large. And sometimes you have to make that hard decision.
Do you think Andrew Berry really wanted to make this decision ultimately? Do you think there's a world possible where ownership said we have to make a move? Especially now, like, Deep Podesta is gone. That was the guy to kind of lobby for Kevin the most. He was gone for the second half of the season. Do you think there's a world maybe where because you made a great point, Mike. He looked very sad today when he got up there, and he even went in detail about how close they really are. And I just wonder, like, he knew all the stuff that went on. Probably, obviously, well, he did. Obviously, he's there every day. He's GM, so he knows a lot more to went on than we do. We ever will. But I just wonder, Mike, does he fully want to make this decision? I don't know.
I fully understand, think that too. From my perspective, I genuinely think they were good friends, and I genuinely think Andrew didn't want to do it, but I think he didn't want to do it out of. I actually have immense respect for Andrew for like, going through with it. So I mean, I'm sure he doesn't want to lose his job too. And there's an argument to be made. He was going to do it to save his job, what have you. But I have immense respect for Andrew for going through it and knowing how close they were. Because if they were that good of friends, that close, and he still basically said, I got to do what's best for the team. I got to do what's best for the Cleveland Browns. I don't think that's my friend. I don't think he's best for the team moving forward. I think that shows some, some strength.
I just question if he really made that decision because, like Daryl
I
Ryder.
question that too.
Yeah, because Daryl Ryder put out a tweet this morning right before all this stuff went off, and we all knew something was going to happen. And he said Kevin Stefanski is a ride for Bria. He's expected to meet with the Haslams this morning. So he met with ownership strictly. It didn't say meet with a Haslam and Andrew. It said meet with Haslam. And if you listen to Jimmy last night, he was talking about he was driving back. He kind of said it without saying it that this has been a decision that has been made for a while. I mean, Jay Glazer, we said last night he's fired because Jay Glazer and Schefter don't come out yesterday and say how blatantly as they said it that he's gone without knowing from probably the guy making the decision ultimately, and that's Haslam. So I just get that vibe today, Mike. I don't think that Barry. I really question whether he actually wanted to do this. I think this is Haslam saying no more, and I think he wanted to move on and make a change. And it just makes you kind of wonder, though, Mike. I don't know if they really have a direction right now because. When you have an owner like that says we need to it's almost like somebody's got to be scapegoated in this because it's just been too bad for 2 years that when we knew we were in a transition, as they called it, but we feel like it's time to move on. It's just like, well, damn, you in some ways, I feel just fancy because you put the guy in some of these predicaments, and you hired him on one basis for what he was good at, and you never really let him fully blossom into that, and now here we are 6 years later, and it's like, well, we'll just fire him. And that's what I want. But you can stay, Andrew, because you had a good draft. It's just like I don't think this is a bright spot for Haslam today, Mike. I'm just being honest. I think looking at it now and thinking about, I just think he's still to make that comment about the dysfunction, but then the way they're going about it and the comments being made from Andrew and him, it just still seems to me like it's just they don't seem like they have a direction right now.
Huh.
In my opinion.
Yeah, I mean,
and that'll go on to our next part, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's a hard day, just for, because I really do think they liked Kevin. You know what I mean? I think they liked him. I think they really wanted it to work. And now I completely agree with your comments that, and that goes back to the depot stuff that, they were trying to get Kevin to do things that maybe he wasn't super familiar with. And then, but for me, it keeps going back to, well, maybe he had more control over the past 2 seasons, or maybe he, it's the failure to adapt to strong personalities that for me, that would have been enough. The Baker Mayfield thing, the Odell Beckham Jr., there's a plethora of other players.
He was a leader.
I mean,
I think he was a leader, but he wasn't a strong enough leader and an alpha to overcome all this.
Yeah, correct.
And that's not a downfall to him. I think if you put Kevin in an organization, let's say like Philly, where they already have structure and stability and there's alignment up top from the top down, and you just plug and play him, I think he could do really well.
Yeah.
But
if I'm Kevin Stefanski, I'm not taking the Johnny job.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you got to put him in a place, though, where he's got to build everything from the ground up, which is Cleveland, that's not his gig. He's not.
Right.
I don't think he's a builder. I don't think he's a builder. I think he's a developer in some ways, and also more of just kind of like keeps the train moving.
Right.
If that makes sense. But
yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
But I don't know. We're gonna find out. Robert Colbert says Deion Sanders is talking about being the next head coach. That's a 0% chance. Deion Sanders might not be coaching at all after next season. He may medically retire. But he's not going to come in the NFL ever. I would offer Jim Schwartz for head coach, and that was something that was discussed today. Mike, both said they will seriously consider Jim Schwartz, which I think he should. He deserves consideration.
Absolutely.
We talked about it last night. I have no problem if they went with Jim Schwartz. I know Stump Mitchell and some others think Jim Short should get the job, and I understand where they're coming from. Obviously, they understand the relationship being in the building, but yeah, he will be consideration though, Mike.
Yeah, and he deserves it.
Yeah, offensive line needs an overhaul.
Yep.
That was Andrew Berry made that clear today. There will be an overhaul. Mike Singletary might need a look at. I haven't heard his name at all, Mike. I don't think he probably will. If you haven't heard it by now, I don't think he'll be a candidate.
Correct. Yeah.
We never ran screenplay, no downfield passes. Receivers are need, and offensive line sucks. Offensive lineman can't block my dead grandma, he said. That's a hell of a comment. But we'll go on to Andrew Berry now, Mike. Anyways, I appreciate the comments, Robert. I was making us laugh. But anyways, Andrew Berry, Mike, he had a lot to say today. We'll start just quickly here with his opening statement, but I want to get more to these key answers he had with the media, Mike. Some of these questions that were asked him I thought were fascinating. So here's his quick opening statement.
All right. Today's obviously a tough day for the organization. It's a tough day for me personally, largely because of the relationship, both professional and personal, built with Kevin over the past 6 years. I think many of you have heard me say that Kevin's like family. There really isn't a better person. He's the best of us. We all owe him a debt of gratitude and appreciation for a level of success that he brought the organization that really hadn't been achieved since 2002. And that's something that we'll always remember. Coming into this season, we were realistic that, we were a team and a roster in transition. And ultimately, this decision is born from the fact that we've ultimately felt like we did not see enough progress in areas that were controllable, independent of certain game outcomes. Everything that we do is with the idea of bringing a perennial winner to Cleveland. And this decision falls in that bucket as well. There are many tough decisions that we have made that we'll have to continue to make in order to fulfill that promise. And I know how hard it's been for our fans this year. We have a great appreciation for their loyalty, their dedication to the team. I think back to our last home game against Pittsburgh. They were such a huge factor in that game. And then for them to support late in the year, big rival, had everything to play for. It's quite the testament to show how much this team means to them and ultimately what we owe them because of that. So in terms of next steps, really our focus is on identifying and finding, the leader and the partner to bring along this young team as well as the young players that we're going to add in the next several months. So that work is going to be deliberate. It's going to be immediate right after we finish this press conference. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
And so, Mike, he said a lot there, obviously, in that opening statement. But what really stood out to me, though, Mike, honestly, was A, he seems very upset that he had to do this. And B, I'm going to say my next comment. You go ahead, Mike. He seems very upset about it. Obviously, he mentions right off the bat they're close friends and family, basically. I don't think he really wanted to do this, Mike, but I'm just curious. What was your reaction there to his opening statements?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, I'm sitting at, if your dad, if I did something massively stupid and I kept doing dumb stuff and your dad couldn't defend me anymore and he had to let me go, I don't think that would be a happy day for, your dad. But if I deserved it, I deserved it, right? I think
That's
it's
a hell of an
very
analogy.
much.
Yeah, like if Jeff said, hey, we can't put up with Mike anymore. He's got to go. Like it's just too much.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
It's just not working out. Which
right.
We've seen, you and I know people, not gonna name any names, obviously. We know people in that business where they tried giving him a shot. My dad did, or whoever, and eventually got to the point where they're like, "Yeah, it ain't working out."
Right. And it's never a good day for somebody like that when you have somebody that isn't just another employee, it's somebody that you care about, that you consider family.
Yeah.
You know, I even though if it's for the betterment of your overall store, team, whatever business you're running, you know, I think it can get complicated when you get such deep personal relationships. And not to say my field is much like NFL, but in a way it is, just because of the amount of time we spend with each other, and how much of time we are away from home in our field, that it's kind of akin to that in football. I'm sure in the NFL, especially in front office, like you know, players, maybe they hang out in the off season, but they get, you know, months off, and then it's go, 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 go. The front office doesn't clock out. You know, they're
not
they're
24/7.
always there. They're always right. They're always there. They're constantly together. And I sincerely think that's what this is. That's why I brought up that analogy. I think that Andrew has the frame of mind, and he's a smart man. He understands that this needed to be done. And here, maybe Jimmy had, you know, a little bit more to do with it. Maybe Jimmy was talking to Andrew like, we can't keep doing this. But Andrew, at least, because Andrew very well could have walked away if he didn't at least somewhat agree, right? But it sounds like, you know, he at least had the frame of mind to understand that, you know, maybe Jimmy's right, if Jimmy's the one that floated the idea originally, and that, you know, he's just unhappy to do it. You know, I wouldn't, if I was in his position, like I'd probably be up there pretty upset too, you know?
Well, you make some great points, and I agree with all those things. I just think when I say I don't know if he wanted to do it, it's because he knows what some of the bullshit Kevin put up with, right?
Right.
The 6 years. He saw it every day. I think that's where his compassion probably, or not his empathy a little bit towards Kevin. No, Kevin wasn't perfect by any means. I would have moved on anyways because I'm my style, who I want, and I think where the Browns are, we need a different style of leader. Nothing personal with Kevin. I think he'd be a really good coach. Just like we said earlier, it just may not fit what we need in our structure and where we are. We need somebody who can build and has done it before. And we'll get to that more in a minute. But you know, I just think too, Mike, that you know, you made a good point there at the end though about how, you know, if he disagreed with it, he would have left. I'm just curious, Mike, though. We heard some rumblings that he was going to have a different role, right? And we saw they brought in Chris Greer and Telesco. So we were starting to wonder, like, well, okay, what is that role change going to be? So far today, it just says we're keeping him as GM, stay put, and nothing's changing with him. He's just, nothing. He's just fully, he's fully in charge now. But, I think, to me, Mike, when I hear that, it makes me think, A, DePodesta did have a lot more influence than media wanted to say for some reason. And B, maybe that is his role now. You know, he was asked today, and we'll get to that in a second, about, DePodesta and his influence in the organization. Actually, I'll just go to it now, since we're already on it. And what did he do? And I thought his answer was kind of interesting. He was also asked, Mike, too, before I play this, that, is that role going to be replaced? And he said, no, it's not. We got people internally we like. So I wonder if he really just took that role over. Now it is the Andrew Berry Show fully. Here's what he said about DePodesta.
Let me-
Can I follow up by asking you, what did Paul do? We didn't get a chance to talk to you in mid-season, so can you tell us what he did?
Yeah. So Jeff, I think, this is something that we've covered a lot over the past 6 years. Paul, let me just say this. Paul is a longtime executive, former general manager, incredibly strong, sharp thought partner, huge in terms of strategic thinking, and really built up the research and strategy group as well as player development. Paul did a lot for the organization over his time here. And we're grateful for the amount of time that he did spend with us.
So interesting stuff there, Mike. In some ways to me, because he kind of was, no, maybe not interesting, but just he was kind of vague about it. But he does say though, Mike, he was a big part of that organization and a lot of stuff. And he said player development, which I'm not sure what Paul DePodesta knows about player development, but that's a whole other thing. But he was pretty involved though, Mike, I think. And like again, he was asked earlier, because we heard this whole thing about, remember those rumors, like we said, that he's going to get a role change, possibly. And that Kevin was gone, and that he would just get a higher role, maybe, or just an adjusted role. So maybe he is the guy now. of just maybe that maybe they just said, okay, you're the guy, Andrew, you fill that. That's what it
Yeah,
sounds like.
you are
Now he's
you
leading the
are
coaching
now
search.
spearheading the Cleveland Browns. It's your show. Yeah.
Yeah, because who led the coaching search last time? Debo. So I'm just
Right.
curious your thoughts.
Yeah, no, I mean, here I agree. I think it's the Andrew Berry show now. I think he has, and earned over that, at least the past year, complete control over front office movement, changes, personnel. Great with contracts. He has a pretty good eye for talent. Maybe it's turning into a great eye for talent. Because people do evolve, people do learn. If last year's draft was anything to go on, and he has even a similar draft, slightly similar draft this year on the offensive side of the ball, I think we'll be in a pretty good place personnel wise. And if he can tackle that, I'm curious just to see what kind of coach that he brings in. But yeah, Depot led the head coaching search, and he hired Andrew. So I'm sure they were beholden to him in some way, shape, or form. And now that it's completely and utterly the Andrew Berry show, it's gonna be interesting to see.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and I think that's kind of what we're nailing down here, Mike. That DePodesta leaving really was the opening to the end of this 6-year run with all these different guys. Sorry, I just got a text here of some of these head coaching candidates. The odds are already coming out, Mike. The leading odd candidate right now is Robert Saleh, 5-1. Mike McCarthy, 7-1. Joe Brady, 8-1. Jim Schwartz and Clint Kubiak are tied at 9-1. Michael LaFleur, 10-1. Tommy Reese, Halfley, Kingsbury, Nagy, all at 12-1. Sanders, Shula, Flores, 25-1. Ryan Day's name was even on this list. Then that's somebody I had threw out as a wild card recently. I'm actually getting a little more intel on that. So I don't think right now Ryan Day is coming out, but if I hear something, I'll let you guys know, obviously. But Robert Saleh, Mike, is the leading candidate. I don't like that, Mike. I don't like a guy that reads off of. I mean, we saw this guy in the Hard Knocks. He was reading off of a paper to his team with his notes. I just don't think he's. I'm not a fan of that one, Mike. I'm curious what you think of Robert Saleh.
I mean, again, people change, people evolve. He's been back in San Francisco, back under Shanahan again. As far as retreads go, he's not like the worst possible option. The worst option on that list was Mike McCarthy. Get out of town with that.
I think Matt Nagy might be the worst.
And that one.
He got his coffee every morning. He's hired. Or Cliff Kingsbury. How the hell does he fit here?
No. If Cliff Kingsbury ever gets another head coaching job, I riot. Yeah, no,
I'll be honest, Mike. They have Deion Sanders linked with Chris Shula and Brian Flores, which Deion Sanders shouldn't even be on the list. But Chris Shula and Flores, to me, I think they're actually the top two, in my opinion. I don't care
and I
where
would
these other
agree.
guys are coming from. 25-1, I would take that. And
that's probably a pretty good bet.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ryan Day eventually will make that jump. Eventually, I don't know when. I think there's a reason why. I'll just say it. I think there's a reason why Marcus Freeman went back to Notre Dame. I think he knows he's going to get a job one day. I'll just leave it at that. But when that happens, I don't know. But I think Schwartz, Shula, and Flores, to me, are the most realistic. I think they'll interview other guys, but I just don't see. I don't see it, Mike, with Roberts. Mike McCarthy, like you said, Joe Brady. No,
I think Saleh is high on that list because we've interviewed him in the past, and the odds makers aren't. There's still little information available because it's still so fresh. That's why he's the favorite, because he had an interview in Cleveland at one point.
Yeah.
So
I'm not completely ruling him out. I just didn't like what I saw from his time with the Jets.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan now.
Here, abilities to be a strong leader, yes. There are things I do like about him. I just don't know. I don't know. I don't think it's the best. It might not be the best candidate, is what I'm saying.
I would have to agree.
Mike, we'll go to how they're going to go about searching with this, head coaching committee, and right here, Andrew Berry was asked today about the committee. Here's what he had to say.
Being a coordinator, and the head coach's responsibility is to make sure that the offense is run and developed well, as opposed to necessarily having to be the person that directly does it.
And I want to comment on that. That was the question before about the react to. He was asked, are you looking for more of an offensive minded guy? How bad the offense has been? He said, Mike, basically what I was saying they should be looking for is that we're not looking for just an offense. We're not hiring you just for your offense. The one word he kept bringing up today was leader, 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 leader. That's why I think, Mike, I don't feel like they really have a real direction right now in terms of know-how to get to where they want to get to. That's why, to me, it's very important they hire somebody from a winning culture who has done it before. Like, if you're going to hire a first-time guy, Chris Shula to me makes a lot of sense. 9 years with the Rams, won a Super Bowl. McVay spent a lot of time with him to prepare him. Or you bring in a guy who maybe has won before and maybe head coaching experience, right? I think coming from a winning environment matters in this situation. Kevin Stefanski, Mike, he said it today. We were the only team that gave him an interview for the first NBA head coach from a first. And he came from a stable organization, the Vikings, but they haven't won a Super Bowl. They haven't been like it's not like the Rams or like the Niners or, places like that where
Right.
every year they're a contender. That's what we need, somebody like that. And so do you have a quick comment on that even when he was wrapping up there with his statement?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we kind of hit the nail on the head in past shows saying, like, I think, they're looking for a guy who is good at running everything, because I think it can be hard unless you're very versed in it, in running the offense on top of handling every other thing a head coach has to handle. I think they're just trying to get a handle on, like, here, make everything stable, like, so we don't have to deal with like the chicanery of, 1 year the offense is a top 10 offense, but the defense is bad. 1 year the defense is top 5, but the offense is bottom 5. Like this weird non-complementary kind of area that the Browns have been in, where like they hyper focus too much on one side of the ball. And I think that has to do a lot with the
Kind of lack of direction.
Kevin Stefanski being the de facto play caller while he was here, as well as the head coach.
And I think
up until recently, very recent.
And I think he mentioned, Mike, in this statement he said before, I get the vibe that they're not looking for a guy to come in and be a play caller and a head coach. I think they want somebody to just be a strictly CEO. I think they want a real just alpha leader, get us to the promised land. And we'll get to his last statement here. But the next one he talked about, though, Mike, was, will the coach have say? We've seen a lot of reports, Mike, that they really like Tommy Rees. And he was asked about Tommy Rees and Shorts today and spoke very highly of them and kind of reiterated those reports, that especially with Rees, that he's highly thought of. Although he did emphasize, though, Mike, what did you think of that moment? I know people see it when he was asked about Tommy Rees in particular. We know what he said about Jim Schwartz. Everybody knows about Jim Schwartz. That's no surprise. But when he talked about Tommy Rees, he said he's highly sought after. He's not highly thought. He's highly thought of in college ranks in the NFL. But he used the word coordinator with him, and I think they'll throw his name in there, Mike. But I don't think Tommy Rees is going to be the guy they're going to hire. I don't know if you got that vibe when he answered that question today.
I kind of got that vibe too. And here, I don't blame them if they don't hire Tommy Rees. Honestly, even though I think Jim Schwartz does deserve a lot of consideration, I wouldn't blame them if they didn't hire Jim Schwartz just because they felt like they needed an outside voice. You know what I mean? Someone that hasn't been in the room.
Jim Schwartz mesh with Andrew Berry. That's because he said there we need a leader, but somebody who is aligned. Which he's right.
Right.
If you're going to be the guy, you might as well get somebody you have to have somebody you're aligned with, or like we've seen in the past year, it ain't going to work. So,
right.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's why I said last night, ultimately, I think Jim Schwartz will come down to Haslam. If Haslam believes he's the guy, Haslam may have to make a decision between the two, and that may be where Jim Schwartz gets phased out. Or maybe they are aligned. I don't know. I mean, we don't know the relationship between Schwartz and Berry, what he truly thinks. That's what I'm going to ask Stump that question. But because that ultimately, I think that's what that would come down to me. I think, like you said, we've been saying the Tommy Rees thing. I think they're trying to maybe lure a coach to keep him here because they like him, but I don't think they're going to make him that coach. And I still think he may go to college and get a job. I mean, some college is going to call eventually, probably this offseason, somewhere. I mean, Brian Hartline went to USF, so I'm sure he can get a job somewhere if that's what he wants to do, but I don't know.
Right.
But he was asked though, Mike, will they try to force the new head coach to keep people on his staff? Here's what he had to say to that, because there's been speculation about that.
Any other changes to the coaching staff made today?
There were not, Scott.
Will you require the new coach to keep anybody on the staff, whether Jim or Tommy?
I'll touch what I said a little bit earlier. You know, ultimately that'll be the head coach's prerogative. Obviously, we'll have a number of discussions about the existing staff, but that'll be the head coach's prerogative.
So it'll be his prerogative, Mike. Like the song "My Prerogative." It's his prerogative.
My-
My prerogative.
Don't
bust
copyright
out-
us.
Yeah, we're gonna do a quick singing performance for you guys. No, but your reaction to that, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I hear that's fair, and that they're gonna keep him on staff, and like if they interview somebody and they really, really, really like him, and they're like, this is our guy. If it's between getting your head coach that you believe is going to turn your team into a winner again, or a coordinator who has done a fantastic job, like at the end of the day, you're going to pick the head coach and just hope that he can use the personnel just as well.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely fair. Like it is a little weird to like make a head coach keep your coordinators. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of head coach candidates out there that would be like upset having to keep Jim Schwartz, but having to keep everybody. Yeah. I mean, I get it. Like you're not going to, you're not going to limit your options because of keeping your coordinators.
Right. Yeah. No. And he made a point to them, Mike, too, but he believes his players are, because he was asked about players going scheme to scheme. And he said he believes the guys in his defense are, number one, they got the corner contract, but also they're scheme versatile. And to me, that was kind of saying, like, yeah, it's not a priority for us to keep the same scheme defensively. We just feel like we need to get the right head coach above all. So I think Jim Schwartz would be a consideration, Mike, but I ultimately don't think either him or Tommy Reese will get the job. But that's a vibe I get.
I'm kind of getting that vibe as well.
And I want to go back to this real quick, Mike. And we'll end with the last topic I have here after this one. But, let's go back to this real quick, these comments.
Responsibility is to make sure that the offense is run and developed well, as opposed to necessarily having to be the person that directly.
The others on the committee, who will they be?
Yeah, Tony, I won't go into specific names. It's a good question, but you say we're going to leverage the expertise across our football operations group. This is an organizational decision. It's not just a singular person who does everything. You're hiring for a position that's going to have such a huge daily and yearly impact on the team, and we want to make sure that we leverage the expertise of many people in our operation as we go through the process.
And so that's what he said there, Mike, going back to what he said about the committee, right? And so he brought up a name today, though, and they asked him, is there any outside, basically what Grossy was asking, is there an outside guy you'll be collaborating with? Also, we've heard reports of Tom Telesco get an interview, Chris Greer. We know the relationship with Telesco. And I just wonder, though, is there actually somebody out there they're going to collab with? Well, he brought up a name today, Mike. I thought was interesting that he just mentioned talking about a story, but somebody I brought up on the show last week that is close friends with Haslam as well, that Haslam has consulted with on the record in the past. And here's that.
And then I'll go to you, Terry. Let me go to Nate first.
I just remember John Dorsey years ago. He was a very experienced GM sitting up there and saying about a coaching search.
Yeah.
He's driving home at night. He's telling himself, just don't screw this up. So how prepared do you feel to lead a coaching search? And is there anyone you're going to be leaning on?
Yeah, we're going to leverage a lot of people with experience and people with, I'd say, process expertise, both internally and externally. Being a head coach in the National Football League, it's a really, really, really hard job. And I think it's at times maybe a little bit like players where you try and make the best decision that you can at the time with the information that you have. But, I joke is like, I don't actually, Bill Polian used to say this, that like other than running for Congress or governing in Congress, like position of head coach may be just as hard because of all the different challenges and things that you face. And so what we're going to do, we're going to ensure that we have a process that, is well defined in terms of what we're looking for and what the role will be specific to our organization. And we'll make the best hire we can. I'm confident we'll find a good coach. And then a big part of it, no different than quarterbacks, Daryl, is we've got to support that individual to make sure that they can have success as they lead us.
So, Mike, you look at the last two comments we heard from him, right? He's talked about how they're not going to force a coordinator, but he did say they will have conversations with the head coach, right? We heard that about people on their staff. He said we'll have conversations about people on our staff, obviously, with the new head coach. But he mentioned a name there, Mike, Bill Polian. Well, Bill Polian's son, Chris Polian, Mike, actually works for the Browns. He's an advisor for the Browns. It says Chris Polian is an American football executive who's an advisor for the Cleveland Browns in the NFL. Bill Polian, Chris Polian, his son, was a John Carroll guy. You know, we heard the name Tom Telesco interviewed recently. He's a big John Carroll guy as well. One of the coaching candidates recently named Chris Shula. Guess what? Shula family, John Carroll family. The field's named after his dad or his grandfather, Don Shula. Chris Shula, John Carroll guy, connections to John Carroll. John Carroll's actually looking for a coach right now, too, for themselves. But a lot of John Carroll connection, Mike, but Chris Polian, and also we know Bill Polian is a good friend and a great advisor for Jimmy Haslam. Obviously, that's it's probably why his son works here, Chris. And so I hear the Polian name, Mike. I hear John Carroll. I hear Tom Telesco's name brought up recently. I see Chris Shula's on the list. Shula, Barry, Telesco all worked together with the Colts. And Bill Polian obviously was the architect of those teams with the Colts. I mean, you kind of connect the dots, Mike, and guess what? Tommy Rees, if they really think that highly of him, which it seems like they do, but they want to keep him around. He worked with Chris Shula under Tom Telesco with the Chargers back in 2016. So there's a lot of connections here, Mike, with this John Carroll takeover, basically. The Polian family, the Shulas, Barry's in the mix, obviously. And then you got Telesco's name being brought up. I just get a vibe, Mike. There may be a little something all brewing there, and I think Bill Polian is a little more involved. The Polian family, rather, him and his son are probably a big key in this coaching search, like I brought up last week.
Wow, yeah, I think those are. I think you're uncovering the tea leaves, as it were. That I didn't know that his son worked here. That's. And here I'm all for Chris Shula. He's one of my favorite coaching candidates. I mean, I didn't know there were so many connections with John Carroll as well. I know you had mentioned that before, but
I keep
just
saying
to hear it all.
John Carroll takeover.
Yeah, John Carroll takeover. And here, I mean, Chris Shula's ties with Tommy Rees, getting to keep him, and then Tommy Rees really having the say in like offensive personnel too. I think it would go a long, long way too in helping this team move forward. And here, I think Shula is an excellent defensive mind as well.
He's still my number one choice.
Yeah,
he's my number one choice. I think he checks all the boxes I think that they need. He's you watch him and then research on him, and people say he's number one. He's part from a great organization with the Rams. He's won a Super Bowl, right? He spent a lot of time under a great coach. Obviously his grandfather's an all-time great, and I think he's an alpha leader. Just by watching him, you could tell just his presence on the field. I think he'll be a leader. I think he'll demand excellence. And he has a know-how to win, and he aligns with all of them. I brought up Bill Polian's name on my show last week, as I said, because I was get more into that Telesco news that came out, and obviously Chris Greer's name was thrown in there, but I think Telesco is the one I'm more keyed in on, and so some other reporters have said that as well because of his relationship with Andrew Berry. They're so close. I know Greer and Andrew have a great relationship too, but Telesco to me makes a lot of sense, and especially Mike when Tom Telesco went on a Kay Adams podcast recently and said that the role he's kind of thinking of getting into now is more of helping organizations with like structure and stuff like that, not really GM. So I could totally see Tom Telesco actually getting hired, like Josina reported. And you got the Polian family here. Well, they're all connected through John Carroll, through the Colts. You know what I mean? There's a lot of connections there. And I think ultimately when it comes down to it, I still believe, in my opinion, I know I said last night I heard a lot of Flores stuff, but hearing him bring up Bill Polian's name today, Mike, when asked, the guy was asked about John Dorsey. When John Dorsey, the reporter was a great question. He was asked about Dorsey had experience, and he had done that before, being a GM, and he said, where are you kind of going to lean on for your experience? This is your first time as a GM finding a coach. and he brought up Bill Polian's name, and then his son Chris works in the organization, and Bill Polian's a great advisor, actually a great friend and advisor for Jimmy Haslam. And that was reported by a lot of people. Colin Cowher brought it back up last summer in that report he gave that time about the Saban Arch Manning thing. And so you look at all these connections, Mike. I just still think Chris Shula to me might be the odds-on favorite to win. I know he's 25-1 right now according to Bet Online, but I would bet on that right now. I just think the Polian influence, I think, is really getting heavy in on the team now.
Yeah.
That's probably who's actually got Haslam's ear the most. This is pure speculation on my part. With Deep Podesta gone now, I think Haslam's really going to lean on people he trusts, and why wouldn't you trust the Polians? I mean, they've been, obviously the success speaks for itself with Bill, and obviously Andrew worked under them with the Colts, and you're hearing Telesco's name and Shula. They're all connected, and Tommy Reese maybe be thrown in there too. I don't know, but I know I said a mouthful there, but I'm just curious your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, kind of goes back to what I was saying, like hearing all of that. I mean, with having that resource for Andrew to lean on, but also like and having such a huge impact like Telesco and Polian on the search, and the fact that Andrew is going to be leaning on these guys. I mean, obviously the name Shula would come up. I think you're just reading the tea leaves correctly, man. I mean, and it's the fact that
not to cut you off, but I'm sorry. He said too, just to add, he said we already have him in house who we need to help the committee. Well,
right.
Who's in house?
Right.
We know who's in.
But
house.
yeah, man, I'd be all for Shula. Just interview him once and then just hire him. Just be like, you have the job. I know. Wait, no, they can't do that. They have to interview a couple people.
They have to interview 2 minority candidates, and then they'll interview some other people. I think Mike, he has an idea of who he wants to go to, and that's why you said I'm cracking into the tea leaves a little bit, kind of read between the lines, who's connected to who, and I if I had to bet my money right now, I still think Chris Shula is going to be the guy. And I've been saying that for 2 weeks.
That is fair, and I hope so.
And I hope so too. I like Chris Shula. I think he's the man for the job, honestly. Jonathan Gannon, Mike, was fired today. I know Mary Kay already went out and put her campaign ad out for Jonathan Gannon, saying he'd be a great candidate. And I'm out on that, Mike. I don't even know the retread that just got fired. Your thoughts on Jonathan Gannon?
I think Kolb, shout out Kolb on Twitter, but he said it best. I wouldn't even want him coaching St. Ed's.
Could he get the John Carroll job?
Maybe. Gannon, maybe he could get.
Now, he is a St. Ignatius guy. He's a Nagy guy. I went to Louisville, but I just don't think, Mike, that's where we need. We shouldn't hire somebody right now that just got fired.
Did a kind of a not a great job in Arizona, and it's not like Arizona didn't have a good amount of picks. Like, yeah, it was not a great situation, but like, it's just he's not someone I even want to bring up. That's somebody that needs to go be a coordinator or a head coach in college somewhere. He's defensive.
He's a defensive guy. Okay. Because I'm just wondering, maybe could he be a coordinator here possibly? But
he was originally the defensive coordinator for the Eagles when they went to the Super Bowl and lost the first time.
So that's the connection, basically, through Barry and the Eagles. So I know him and Stefanski were good friends too, and I get it, he's from Cleveland. I don't see that, Mike. I don't think they're going to go for Jonathan Gannon. I'm sure he'll get interviewed. I won't be surprised by that. And that doesn't really alarm me. And I'm not saying Jonathan Gannon might become a good coach one day. Obviously, it's a first-time guy. I think he's kind of in the same boat as Stefanski a little bit, but I don't think that's where we're going to go.
I agree.
Chantel's in the house. She said, hey, Mike and Joseph and Mike. Hello, Chantel. Good to see you as always. Raiders, Browns, Falcons, Cardinals all fired their head coaches along with the Tennessee Titans and the Giants. So, yeah, you have 6 teams, Mike, looking for coaches and some even looking for GMs too, which is crazy. The last thing we'll wrap up with here, Mike, he was asked about Shedeur Sanders today, Mike, and he said a lot of what's going to happen with the quarterback moving forward is going to be kind of centered on what the head coach wants, which I agree with. I think your head coach, and I said that last night, your coach may want somebody else for what he desires his team to look like. And I thought Shedeur overall was good and bad down the stretch. I think he's a guy you can move forward with if you develop him properly and put him in the right structure and give him a full offseason of reps and, get better offensive linemen, put better personnel around him. I think he could become a definite franchise quarterback, no doubt about it. I saw a lot of good things from him. I saw some things he needs to work on, right? Some bad moments. But he's a rookie, mixed bag. So I thought his answer, though, Mike, was very non-committal to Shador, honestly. And I think they have a different plan. I think ultimately the head coach that comes in, who I think they might have an idea who they're going to go for, who they'd like to get, probably may go a different direction. Haslam did mention today, Mike, they have 10 draft picks and they'll be aggressive in either trade opportunities. Maybe they move up in the draft. I don't know. I'm just throwing out a theory. Or maybe they try to go get a quarterback and via trade with the draft picks. And they have an arsenal they can use in terms of picks and some assets. Maybe they could somehow flex something. I don't know. But anyways, here's what he said at the end here. I thought this was fascinating, his answer here.
Get to meet the candidate pool over the next several weeks.
This is your first coaching search since you've been here.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say this is the most important decision of your career as a front office guy?
I'd say this, Jeff. I think we have a lot of important decisions coming up. I think probably the two most important decisions that can be made by an organization are head coach and quarterback. So whichever order you want to put it in, I think that's fair. But look, my focus, I'm 100% dedicated in terms of finding the right person that continue to lead our franchise forward.
And I think, Mike, his comments there really solidify what I've been saying all show, which, they're trying to find somebody with the direction and know-how, because I think that's what they're lacking. And then B, he said my job is to find head coach, not only head coach, but he said quarterback too, Mike. Like, he didn't say, like, yeah, we believe we got somebody in-house. Like, no, to me, Mike, this is the same answer we heard last year from him, where they didn't believe they had the guy in-house, and they went out and brought in 4 different quarterbacks. That's how bad they wanted a new quarterback. So I think, Mike, he has an idea what coach he wants to go, but also he's going to leave it up to the coach ultimately, which I agree with. And I don't think Shador's back here next year, Mike. That's the vibe I'm getting.
Yeah, I mean, very well could be. I can understand.
Back, like he said, because Deshaun's under contract.
Yeah,
he has to be back. But I just don't know, unless that coach thinks he can work with Shador. They're very non-committal on him.
Right. They're going to have to leave it up to the coach. And I think that's why you be non-committal, is because you just don't know what a head coach that you bring in is going to think of the situation. Maybe the head coach they bring in thinks they can win with him and develop him. But there's also, you got to leave room for the possibility of the dude's like, no, I want us to trade both of our picks and, try and get somebody at the top of the draft. It's looking more and more like the Raiders are just going to pick their quarterback, though, now that they fired Pete Carroll. So we'll have to see, but it's really going to be up to the next head coach of the Browns.
And really, they could, if they want to move up and get a quarterback, they can. I mean, it's probably Mendoza or more, right? I think Mendoza is going to go number 1. Now, let's say the Raiders take him, although I think the Raiders may try to trade for Joe Burrow. That's just a speculation on my part. But let's say they take Mendoza 1. Now, you look at the Giants, Mike, they got Dart. They're not taking a quarterback. Titans got Ward. They're not taking a quarterback. Some of those teams up there, the only other team's the Jets, but they could leapfrog them and get up to maybe 2 or 3 and get more, let's say. That may be what they do. Maybe there's a veteran option that becomes available that nobody expects, because that always happens too here and there, and they maybe go target him. You never know. So I think you're right, and I think we agree on this. In terms of what he was referencing to there, that it's going to be up to the coach ultimately, and ultimately whatever coach they hire is probably going to determine the Shador's future.
Correct.
So fascinating stuff, Mike. A lot we got into today. Obviously, it was breaking news. Kevin Stefanski obviously fired from the Cleveland Browns. And best of luck to Kevin Stefanski. I think, like I said earlier, if he gets in the right situation, he can become a really good coach and great guy. And best of luck to him and his family. And I'm sure he'll be fine moving forward. I'm sure he's at peace with it. Probably relieved, honestly. And so, yeah. You got any last words on this, Mike? I know we got you got TPF coming up this week too with some coach candidates or what?
Yep, TPF coming up with some coaching candidates, and mock draft season's here, baby. So we're gonna be doing 1.5 million of those. I'm gonna key in on some tweeners that I think will be stars in the league. I was right about Carson Schwessinger, so stay tuned for the next Mike was right guy. But yeah, folks, like, subscribe, share this content. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for everybody for chatting in, whoever's going to comment in and on the playback. We appreciate you. But yeah, if you could share this content, we would greatly appreciate it. It's just ended our 4th season. So I'm proud of Joseph and I, and in the many shows to come. So stick around, hang out, subscribe.
Yeah, like Mike said, like, subscribe, share all that good stuff, and we will see you guys in the next one. I'm saluting out of here. Mike, what are you doing?
I'm sitting in my car staring at Nature's Bounty, which is a storage unit.
All right, well, have fun doing that. We'll see you in the next one. We're out of here.
Later.